July 3, 2025. And I want to thank you two in Connected with Friends for sending us the Statue of Liberty. I think it's going to become more important than ever. And what's your opinion, Pierre?
About leadership?
Yeah.
Well, it's a big topic. It's a really big topic. I mean, leadership is, for me, leadership is inspiring. The team is the incarnation of values in the daily activity of a company. But leadership doesn't only apply to the corporate world. It also applies to when you are part of an association, when you are in politics, and we can speak about that. But regarding the
Or
corporate
not.
world, leadership, but in the corporate world, leadership is about setting a clear vision. It's about care of the employees and the team members that are working with you. And for me, leadership is also about anticipating the future. For me, these are the three main areas of leadership, but it's a very complex topics where it's also leadership can be assessed based on various cultural components. So um, we could speak for hours, I guess, about leadership.
Yeah, right. Armel, welcome again. First time on the show. Thank you for having the guts to do this. And because a lot of people shy away from this, frankly. So what, why are you here? And I really appreciate you being here, but thank you for your inspiration to join us. It makes the show great TV.
I think you need a woman to speak about leadership. You are only men today, so I'm happy to represent a
I'm delighted that you're here. Yeah.
yeah, because leadership can only be from women, I think. And there is, for me, we always think leadership like this, but it can be from a person, but also from the culture is very different. So if you see, for me, before living abroad, I thought that leadership is more someone who take the way to speak, who speak a lot. In France, it's like this, at least. And when I moved abroad, I realized that it's very different. It really depends on the country you are coming from. So it's interesting to see how we see leadership in different countries. And especially in Asia is very different. You don't speak so much. You listen a lot. And then when you say something, everybody is listening to you because you have, how do you say that in English? You are sage. I don't know in English the word. I mean, you have a lot of experiences, many years experience. So I think it's interesting to see the different approach of leadership in the different countries.
Well, absolutely French. It's just an absolutely wonderful slogan.
Thank you.
Slogan. And
what is your business, Armel?
We help expat spouses integrate in Paris to help them develop their own career in France. So I was an expat spouse in an expat spouse in 7 countries, and I find it very difficult to integrate. So I lost a lot of time to integrate. So we really concentrate in 6 months. They are integrated, and they understand the French work of word in Paris. So we have a partnership with LinkedIn and different administrative things in Paris. So we help them to find a job also. We have a recruiters event every year.
so this is really wonderful. I've started, I'm an entrepreneur at this and certainly a salesman, but I've started this series that Philip helped me develop called Strengthening International Business Relationships. My original title and thought was Developing International Business Relationships, but he said, no, strengthening. And thank you, Philip. So expats, let's just talk about American expats, and I guess any expat, and you know, Pierre, jump in anytime. But Pierre, isn't it true that as an expat, let's just say an American expat coming into Geneva and Paris or anywhere, is not welcomed? They're not shunned, but they're just the other. And everybody has friends, and they don't need another friend, and they don't want to. They got to be careful with strangers. And so, how does the expat remain psychologically safe in that kind of an environment? This is the hidden problems of being an international assignee. Doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. You're always the other, the outsider. So you help people overcome that. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. So, well, first of all, I don't think that Americans are not welcome. There might be stereotypes, but it applies to almost everybody. It applies to Chinese, it applies to Italians, it applies. I mean, our job is to fight against stereotypes. Rule number one. That's really what we are doing, and I see Armel noting because she's in the industry too, and she really knows what we're talking about. So really fight against stereotypes. First thing. Again, today to have an American passport might be you're from very different origins. Again, so we are in a world that is less black and white than it used to be because you have people who can, for example, hold an American passport, have been raised in China, being married with somebody from Australia, and probably being transferred to Russia. So, we have this multicultural types of expats that is really changing the way we anticipate relocation. So that's the rule number one. Rule number two, our role as a relocation provider, as a mobility advisor, is really to make sure that people relocating, for example, to Geneva, they don't stay offshore, meaning they don't stay with their own community, even if naturally
No, you're freezing up. I'm
they
sorry.
will try to connect with, if they are Americans, fellow Americans, if they are Israeli, fellow Israelis, well, that's still their own autonomy in the city where they live to be able to interact with people. When it is in Geneva, they're fortunate because a lot of people speak English in Geneva, and it's a very multinational city. So it's easier when you are an expat in Geneva, where you can spend 3 years without speaking a damn word of French, because we have so many expats. You have like all the international corporations, like you have like over 200 international headquarters, but you have also the UN employees, where you have like something like 20,000. So it's about like 10% of the Geneva population. So you can live there. But in other countries, in other places, it's more difficult. So that's where the mobility advisor has to help them, assist them with, for example, language courses, cross-cultural courses, all the kind of coaching that can help what we call build autonomy.
Armel, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, it's exactly what we do. So I'm sorry, Pierre, because I don't know what is your company name?
Yeah, my company, well, I have different, how do you call it, hats.
Okay.
I work for a company called AHR Talent House that
Okay.
is specializing with global employment companies, EOR, and international human resources consulting. So basically, we work for multinational corporations, and we build companies that employ their employees, and we transfer them around the world.
Okay.
And we also assist them with relocation and immigration. And my company is called HR Relocation and HR Immigration. But I used to own a company called Geneva Relocation that I sold a few years ago.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so I totally agree with the way that you are speaking to language courses and cultural workshops or anything, training are very important. And it's what we do in Absolutely French in one way. I mean, we do teach them cultural things, but we also, there is something that people always forget about integration, is that you need to understand the practical points. So I mean, how you do with your dishes, what you do if you have a problem in your building, with your neighbors, what you do. All these points, usually we forget that. But for me, I lived in 7 countries. I repeat it, but it was very important to understand the practical points. And usually we lose really a lot of time to understand these points. So it's what we do in Absolutely French. You need to have all the practical things and to learn it properly. So it's not only something you say, or it's something they need to understand by doing it. So it's what we do. We go with people in Paris, show them how things happen here. If you need to go to the hospital or what you should do and all of that. So this is one point. I think it's also very important. And then the other one is the community, because arriving in a new country is very difficult if you don't know anybody. And most of the expats arrive here, they don't know anybody. So I think community is very important too, to have meetings with other people here.
So is are you having success being a developmental coach? Are you experiencing a good welcome, or is this a difficult chore for you?
I'm not a coach. It's a company.
Yeah.
We are 14 people in Absolute French, and
Yeah.
we work with big companies. Our clients are L'Oréal, Total Energies, Air Liquide, LVMH, blah blah blah. So we don't do we really work with companies. So it's a partnership, and we really help them to keep the expats in Paris, because the expat spouse is really welcome here with us, so they stay longer. So it's very important for the company we are working with.
Yeah,
Really.
well, they're smart to realize that without somebody like you helping them, they're at risk of assignment failure because of the spouse voicing displeasure with her life, in most cases, her life. So I want to jump aside here. I love your mirror, and that is really clever. Because when I look at that, and in the gist of this conversation, I see that each little corner, each space is clearly marked, and that's like reflecting of who am I? And I'm looking at myself in that mirror, and that's what comes to mind. Was that part of your own thinking? Because that's what I take away from looking at that mirror.
No, it's just yeah, but
Okay.
I always have a mirror when I have a meeting. So thank you for telling me. I didn't know what was in your mind about
Well,
that.
I just had 2 cups of coffee, so I'm jazzed up. Okay, Philip, what do you have to say about this conversation so far?
I mean, this is a great conversation because
Thank you.
what my job as VP of HR for different international divisions, and and also Ormel, I lived in Paris for a number of years, and then also I've worked throughout in over 60 countries, and so Pierre and I, we know each other through almost all of my incarnations. In fact, from the time that I was handling Eastern Europe and Russia and the Middle East and Africa, and then also through Latin America. And the important thing about the work that Ornell and Pierre are doing is to companies is that leaders who are able to understand the social dynamic of integrating their employees into a country are going to be much more successful than those who do not. I mean that's it's critical. It's and the success, the return on investment. I mean, Ed always talks about ROI, and in fact the ROI of having those type of companies and resources, is that you're able to get a return on your investment from having an individual who is successful in one country and then moving, and because he or she has learned very well how to adapt culturally to a country, and not just, matter of fact, the point that Pierre brought up, just because you speak English doesn't mean that you understand the Canadians or the Brits, right? So, and understanding the difference there is extremely important. There's a cultural mix that has to be looked at from that perspective. Interestingly enough, when I was when I was based in Paris, and a person who used to work for me, who stayed there 5 years, and then she left after maybe 4 more years after that. She left Colgate-Palmolive and then went with another company, and she's based in Europe right now still. She couldn't leave. She couldn't she couldn't detach herself because of the wonderful lifestyle, and because of the learning, and because of the joy of discovering a lot more about herself as a leader. So when Armel talks about the fact that there are a number of companies that do not recognize that there's a different cultural dynamic that women bring to an organization, than men. Uh, and if they don't capitalize on that, then they're not going to be successful either. So
So we're going to hear from Philip in a special presentation in a few minutes. Tell us what the theme will be, Philip, and then we'll move on to Stephen Howard and Ron Cooper and
well,
Ali.
one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to look at maybe 5 principles of precepts, factors that individuals should consider as they're looking at their leadership dynamic, and increasing the impact of their leadership on a global basis. And I'm so glad that we have an international group that is on here, because I know that that's how I look at the world. And I know that based on my work, and I know that Stephen will follow up on the way he looks at the world, because he's also been involved in different international assignments, and so have others here. So it's nice, it's refreshing. Nice meaning it's refreshing to be able to talk about the dynamic of leadership within a global context. And so that's what I want to just tee up the conversation by talking about some of those points, and then we'll be interested in the robust conversation that will follow from that.
That's for sure. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you, Ed. Good to see everybody and meet a couple new people. Good morning.
Good morning. Leadership.
Leadership, well, to me, a great leadership is about achieving progress through the involvement and actions of others. And this is why great leaders are strong in both leading people and leading for results. It's not an either or proposition. The ones who have an either or proposition, I'm either leading for results or I'm leading people, tend to be good leaders and very good in that one area, very good people leaders, but they may not achieve the results. And, people who only achieve the results burn out their people typically. But to me, leadership is, there's 2 components about leadership, I think, and maybe hopefully this tees up what Philip's going to talk about. But for me, it's about how you show up. Are you authentic? Are you trustworthy? Can you be trusted? What is your presence as a leader? And then it's how do you act when you show up? Are you motivational? Are you a coach? Are you an authoritarian? Are you a dictator? And so I think those 2 aspects, when a great leader knows how to balance those 2 aspects of understanding how they show up and how they act when they show up as a leader.
Ron Cooper, welcome.
Thank you, Ed. I endorse everything Stephen just said and everything that's been said here so far. Leadership for me is a personal quality trait. It's a character trait. And leadership is not a position, it's a personal trait. And so you may be in a leadership position, but you're not an effective leader. And so I differentiate those two. In the context of HR and culture, one of the things of my company, we are the Cooper culture. We specialize in working with HR personnel to create a culture of harmony within companies. In that harmony, whether it's expat or whatever the environment is making people feel welcome, and people won't speak until they know they've been heard. So it's a matter of welcoming people and soliciting their perspectives. And then I will tell you that in one context of international travel, of the 22 years Marty, my wife, and I were in Germany on military assignment, the Germans were always very welcoming of Americans. When you went into a restaurant or a guest house, it was very common that you had two options. You could sit at a table and be somewhat isolated from others, but there was bench seating, and you were welcome, almost expected to join others. A meal in progress, and very possibly 4 hours later, after many conversations, you've gained friendships at the table, and that's just the overt friendliness that we experience from Germany. But that's how the culture is. But the culture is a matter of leadership, and so those are just some of my perspectives.
Thank you. Ali, welcome.
Good morning, good evening. I don't know if in France it's time to say bonsoir, but I know it's like 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 6 p.m., 5 p.m., and it's now like almost 5 o'clock. So, so bonsoir, Arnab, Pierre, and also hello to everybody that I've met before and I learned so much from. Oh boy, I totally underscore everything, underline 3-4 lines of everything that was said about leadership. To me, as I'm Ali Shami, I'm in Seattle, as Ed mentioned. I worked for the Boeing company for almost 30 years, retired, was lucky to retire early to start my consulting company in global leadership, specifically on doing business across cultures. I had the pleasure to write a book with Stephen and I. We wrote the book, Partnering Successfully with American Firms. And so the focus is, as it is, global leadership, two parts, the cultural awareness and leadership. So so my company, FTD Global, this is what we provide. Thank you so much, Ed. You have the book right next to you. I love you for that. I love you regardless, but now I love you more. So thank you. So to me is, I'm glad to be here. I'm here to learn. To me, leadership is, leaders are dealers of hope. If a leader does not, they might be just in worry. They could be so much pressure on their shoulders there, but they have to present hope. This is the only thing that I add to what I just heard. So leaders are dealers in hope, where they can, as Pierre mentioned, the visionary, be able, the caring piece, also the cultural aspect. Arnel and Philip mentioned about just the cultures. Ron, also, I agree. My experience has been in France has been fantastic. Maybe because I was born in Lebanon, and France and Lebanon were there's a lot of historical relationship. My daughter and my son and I, we went to visit in France, and I've been to France so many times, work and all of that. But just almost every vacation I go to, it's been just fantastic. So yeah, cultures. Every time you feel like one particular culture is different, look into your culture first and you realize, oh my goodness, I am different too. So glad to be here.
Yeah, this is great. Well, just talking with you all makes me want to book another Paris trip. It's been a few years since Joanne and I were there. Always loved the the circle across from where all the cafes around the circle, when we look at the Eiffel Tower, especially at night when it lights up.
Arc de Triomphe, you thinking about it?
That too. The I can't remember the name of the circle. What's the name of that certain circle that where
Trocadéro. C'est la place du Trocadéro.
Thank you.
Yeah, Trocadero.
Yeah, Trocadero. Yeah, that's right. Trocadero. Wonderful. Well, I'm a little speechless here because you guys need to continue talking, and I'm going to learn from you. So, Pierre, tell me, HR talent and HR something else you said? Oh, Talent House, right?
Yes. Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So is this a spinoff from what you did previously, or is it just different?
It's pretty different. Let's say we offered a more globalized service in terms it's really kind of the full outsourcing of international mobility. The company has been founded by the former group HR director of CMS CGM that employs something like 200,000 employees. And there is this specificity about Geneva where a lot of multinational organizations they set a dedicated company to employ all their international talents and can transfer them all over the places to make sure that they have the same policy is in place for all the international transfer wherever they move from to, and that they have the same benefits depending on their role, their status in the organization. And that is exactly what HR Talent House is doing. On top of that, when a company doesn't have a legal entity, we provide EOR service. That is to say, we become an employer of record.
Right.
And a lot of companies now, they don't want to get involved with the local regulations in terms of HR, payrolling, and all that kind of stuff. They no longer have the competence in-house. And they want to outsource that to make sure that they are fully compliant and their talents are being taken care of. Because
So
when
that
you're an organization, you go
yes.
fast. You may have subject in Colombia, the next day in I don't know, in Israel, the day after in Lebanon, the day after wherever, and they don't have that expertise. So they need to rely on a service provider that has that type of resources and guarantee that they remain fully compliant.
So this is a little bit different. Seems like a little bit more easier than GEC, a global employment company, which is
So this is
much more
GEC, yeah.
structured.
Yeah, this is GEC. We do set up and run GECs for our clients, but we add the logistics of international mobility to it. That is to say, we will accompany them with their migration needs, the relocation needs, intercultural training. So it's a GEC plus service.
That's great. Philip, are you ready to do your thing
Yeah,
and use
I
my
can,
screen share?
yeah, I can do something, and I can.
So this will take around 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion.
Yeah, I think probably given the size of the group, I mean, I'll kind of talk maybe for no more than 15, and then we can tee up and have conversation. Let's see if I can.
Great. I really appreciate you doing this.
No, sure, of course. The whole issue, Ed, that you've talked about in terms of why are we here, this topic of leadership is so critical, and in fact, over the last 2 years and looking forward over the next few years, the whole aspect of leadership is going to be something that companies are going to need to take a second look at in terms of the role that they're playing, the role of the individuals who work in those companies are playing, individuals who are on the ground, the role that they're playing, and also how we interface differently, and is going to be a requirement, because the marketplace, meaning not only consumers, but also people who work for those companies, they're going to need that. And so when I talk about leadership, I think there are 5 principles that I really want to just focus on. There's so many ways to look at this topic, but the fact is that we do need to have a new type of leader. And really that new type of leader needs to be one that is globally focused and looking across countries, cultures, and also different fields. And when I talk about cultures, I'm not just talking about the country culture. I'm talking about the fact that there is a diverse aspect of cultural framework that exists, between men and women, different generations. That there's also a culture within those frameworks that impacts things. And so if we look at today's world, what leadership needs to do is to think about how it's going to change within this framework. There's a growing complexity right now. The complexity comes about because of the economy, but not just the economy, the different role that countries want to play, the fact that individuals in our marketplaces are requiring different products and services from companies, and in order for them to be productive. And so leaders have to think about what it takes in order to work across boundaries. And additionally, the changes are coming about a lot quicker. It used to be, as all of us will remember, it used to be a very stable world at one time. I think back maybe 40 years ago, there was a lot more stability. But now faster changes are coming about. And so the need to adapt and to find leaders who know how to adapt and think ahead is extremely important. And then understanding the different viewpoints that exist because of the fact that we have different frameworks that people are operating out of is critical. And so while that means that leaders need to be, whether they like it or not, they have to learn how to listen, and also they have to learn how to be a lot more empathetic, so that way they understand where people are coming from, if people are going to be working in their organizations, and if they're going to be recruiting people, if they're going to be hiring people, if they're going to be interfacing and developing new products and new services. All of that needs to be in place. The first principle I'd like to work from is that understanding different cultural frameworks. And again, when I look at cultural frameworks, I'm not just talking about the fact that, well, I'm French or not, or whatever, or from Arabic or whatever. I'm talking about the fact that you have to look at it in a dynamic where you're looking at age and generation, and also the fact that the role of men and women is changing, and there's a different cultural framework there we need to understand. We need to be able to speak clearly across those cultural frameworks because the expectations that people have are different. They require something different from companies, and also there's something that is required differently from the standpoint of the products and services that we have. And leaders who understand these cultural frameworks are 70% more likely to be globally successful. And matter of fact, when we think about change that is coming about, there are companies that are not, who were existing maybe even 2 years ago, that are not existing anymore in the same way they were before. And what we need to do is to have a framework that understands how to execute different ideas and different thoughts and new solutions to how we are going to develop products and services, and also how we're going to deal with the marketplace. It really starts outside of the organization, not inside, where we need to understand this and have the understanding so that we can create better solutions. And so being able to stay strong during these changes, enabling us to look ahead and track trends is important. The trends, there are a number of issues that are happening right now in, you name any country. I can think of Guatemala, think of Brazil. What are some of the changes? South Africa. What in Hong Kong and China? what are some of the changes that are taking place in there that we need to wonder, how will that impact us in New York? How will that impact us in in Germany? How are we able to grow with each of those changes and use those challenges as a way to help us to be stronger and to adjust our plans and also to help others in our inside our organization, so that way we have clear messages and we can show how much we care about the employees that we have in our organization in order to address those changes. And the third piece is, how can we address working together differently, making room so that everybody's voice can be heard, and that there are thoughts that are in organizations that we need to understand better. We need to understand like, if we're hiring new people, for example, you're not just hiring millennials, you're hiring now Gen Zs, and they have a completely different way in many aspects of looking at the work and also looking at their role within the corporation. And that's something I know that in another session we're going to be dealing with in more depth. But it would be important to understand what those are. And then if we look at the role of the family itself, and the role of men and women in an organization, and this looking at the career that they have, the career path that they have, and how they look at the whole concept of career, that's an extremely important piece, because if we don't integrate our thinking and integrate that thinking into what our career plans are and how we move people, we're not going to be successful. I remembered when I was in being over HR in 60 different countries. I moved people not just from like the United States over to, say, Egypt, or United States over to England, or the United States over to Paris and then back. I moved them from one country to another. My whole job was ensuring that there was a global view that individuals had regarding how they're going to be able to work. So I remember distinctly moving a person from Romania, then moving them over to Turkey, then moving them over to Russia, then Brazil. Why? What's the connection? Understanding hyperinflation, which operates in a very different way than our quote unquote normal inflation that we have. And so we need to have people who are able to make those type of connections, and we need to have teams in place why do we need to have teams in place? Because the work in organizations is not done within the traditional type of organizational framework. Change occurs because there are new organizational entities that come about where individuals have to work differently across functions. It's not, I'm a salesperson, or I'm a marketing person, or I'm a manufacturing person, and therefore I only work in that world. No, we have to have teams in place that are able to work across all of those different functions and think in a non-functional way, thinking in a team fashion because of what they bring. And so that is another thing that leaders need to understand. If you are charting out careers for people, you can't just chart it out in one functional area. We need to get rid of the hat where we just say we're going to bring up a person who is just operating in one particular framework. And that is going to help us to develop new ideas, new thoughts, new solutions, and we'll have teams that are able to function much more effectively, and we're able to help them make better choices.
Philip, can I ask a question?
Please. Mhm.
Somewhat related, I hope, and redirect me if it's not important for this. How do you make a relationship work when people really don't know each other? I mean, how do you create an environment or do you teach how to be relatable?
I think that the whole issue, and I think that in fact maybe some of the things that Steve we'll talk about in terms of his piece. We'll get into that. I'm approaching this from a slightly different perspective right now. However, just to tie into that briefly, when you think about relationships, you're talking about how people are working together. You're thinking about the skills that people have from being able to understand themselves and also understand others in a different way. We're thinking about how we communicate, how we're able to have handle conflict, how we're able to make decisions, and then how are we able to do that within a different framework than might have existed before, because we were brought up thinking one way and operating in one way, but now we have to think in a different way. And so, and in fact, quite frankly, the world, when I think right now about relationships, key relationships that I have on a global basis with people that I still have with individuals who are in different parts of the world. And because I still have a strong, trustful relationship with those individuals, I'm able to get work done, even though I happen to be in a different incarnation from the standpoint of the business that I'm operating in. So I think it's a very critical piece. And therefore, this whole piece here, in terms of how can we work together, it builds right into this piece, because we talk about how can we work together and across the differences that we have, and how can we lift all voices so that way we're making room for everyone to share their thoughts and ideas. How can we make those connections across different cultures? And also, how can we develop different viewpoints regarding, and that will lead to solutions that are different from the ones that we had in place before. And there's another piece that's important that we haven't talked about as much in many leadership circles, and it has to do with how do we make ethical choices with a global view. That is that there are a number of local customs and values that we have to have, and when we're developing policies, for example, we have to ensure that we're taking into account the differences that are within a certain country framework and not imposing. So with me being from the US, not imposing a US view on everything so that everybody is thinking like a quote unquote American. That's not what we need. What we need is to be able to differentiate our policies and our practices, and make them sensitive to the fact that people locally will see and view things in a different way. And when we talk about getting results, we start, many companies just start and stay at results. They don't look at the core beliefs that we have and that exist within certain countries. They don't look at aspects of openness and how they can be open to making changes and having flexibility based upon the local view. And then how can we take and build responsibility for that?
Thank you very much. I want to bring in Ali quickly.
Yes. There's a lot of gems. I mean, Philip mentioned so many great things. Anything in particular you want me to
Well, I saw your hand go up and the heart floating by.
Yeah. I just I loved what I heard, and absolutely I think relationships is everything. I think one of the to your question is what can be done. I think leadership should always focus for psychological safety. I can't say I have a great relationship with one person, but I feel uncomfortable around them. I don't feel safe. Then there's no relationship there. Relationships happens when you have that trust and feeling okay to be comfortable, feeling comfortable, being uncomfortable in situations, but feeling good when you're next to somebody. That is what relationship is all about. There are so many ways to improve that relationships in general. I'll just share one little story about when I was a representative for the company in England, and I was supporting EasyJet Airlines, and I will just every Friday I will walk by the headquarters and I will see all the EasyJet EasyJet employees having hot dogs, having fun every Friday, like 2 o'clock. And so I pass by it every time, like, oh my goodness, you know, I gotta really find out what's so special about having that every Friday. And sure enough, I was and I met the president, Stelios, and I said, Stelios, I want to talk with you about the activity that you do. He said, stop right there, Ali. I know exactly what you're going to ask me. Why doing it on a Friday early, not Saturday, not after work? Why am I doing it on hours? I said, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to ask. He said, you will not believe how great relationships we built outside work, where people are connecting, they're eating, they're laughing, they're talking about sports, they're talking about sometimes politics, right? But he said, you won't believe how many walls we broke down by just bringing people together. So really how to build relationships, there's the format, the environment. There could be so many ways leaders can do to improve relationships between employees. And the most important thing is be daring to get people to look at their differences and appreciate their differences. So,
Ron?
Yep.
Ron
Hey,
Cooper?
yeah,
Ryan made a
Ed,
point.
to advance what Ollie was saying, and I think Philip was saying the same thing. I had a conversation very recently, it was just less than a week ago, with a person who said, my goodness, these people, without mentioning the territory, these people open their storefronts at 6 a.m. and they shut down at 3 p.m. I don't know how they do that. I'm not a morning person. And so, you know, it's a matter of assimilating with where we are with other people and not trying to change them to what to the expectations we have. And as we choose to adapt to, and yes, very definitely, Ali, as we choose to want to assimilate ourselves with other people, I'm very interested in your perspective, everyone's perspective on this call on other people. And we need to spend a lot of time just listening and assimilate what people are saying with the purpose of, I just want to understand where you're coming from. And even though we're very different, we can still functionally work very, very well together. And so that's a lot of what I represent with my company, the Cooper Culture, the culture of just learning how to get along well with each other. It seems like a very elementary principle, but if we focus on the good, the positive, we're going to find it, guarantee it.
Ron, following this program in around 35 minutes or so, you and I are going to have a conversation. What is your theme going to be?
Well, the theme of what I'm suggesting, and it very definitely affects Marty and me right now, is that we may have to, let's say we are unsettled with the current situation of whatever that may be. But I'll tell you very briefly with Marty and me without prolonging, is the state of Maryland. It has increased its taxes, and do we want to continue living in Maryland? And so we're a bit unsettled, and so we might want to move someplace else, back where we are considering. We own property about 3 hours from here, and we are considering right now moving to that property, but that would be staying in Maryland. But then it's a matter of okay, with the taxes and and the current economic situation we're in, do we want to make Maryland our permanent home, or might we want to move someplace else? But it's all a matter of, okay, I am just unsettled. That's the core premise of my conversation. And with that being unsettled, what is it that in your thinking, your core values, and what is it that provides fulfillment to you that can help you just have a settled feeling? Because right now the external factors are unsettling. And one of the things I emphasize is make sure you know those factors over which you do and do not have control. But very briefly, that's what the next topic is.
All right, thank you very much. Philip, thank you for your
Yes, and
patience, sir.
I'm gonna move. I just have 2 more slides, and then I'll do, so that way we can move into other conversations. But this next one is something that is on all of our minds, and it has to do with how we're using technology and creating new solutions based on that. People are afraid of AI, and I'm saying that they shouldn't be. I mean, there used to be a time when we were afraid of driving a carriage down the streets because we thought that the buggy whip would help the carriage that we have get down there quicker than this newfangled automobile. Yeah, and I guess because I started out in technology, my first job was at IBM, and so I'm very comfortable with the fact that when you think about change, that AI is something that can be very beneficial to us, and we can work together. We need to be able to keep data safe, and especially on a global basis, that's extremely important. You don't have to be experts technically, but as leaders, we need to understand how we are able to use technology and how it can impact our lives. And so the last piece that I would have is that the next steps on this is that first, individuals need to assess where they are in terms of all of these 5 principles, develop a plan that will help you focus on the areas that are best for you, practice them, and also mentor and help others so that way they're able to grow. And we have to train people, therefore, to keep it moving, train people in cross-cultural competency, build diverse teams, clear up ethical guides, set up and clear up ethical guidelines, and also plan for how we're going to use technology more effectively and efficiently.
Philip,
So
what does ethics mean to you in this regard?
to me, ethics is how people make decisions. It has to do with the values to the policies that guide the decisions that we're involved in on a business basis and also with our people, with our planet, and with our products.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That is deep.
And there's all of that. So let me end with this here. One of the things that people can do, especially in terms of rebranding themselves, leaders need to rebrand themselves, and that's certainly something that I focus on in my book here. And the last piece I have is just here in terms of how people can be in touch with me, which I think is a number of you have that, or if not, it's on the line there, which Ed can give you. And that's my piece there.
Yeah,
So I
this
think,
is really masterful. And thank you for spending this time doing this. And I appreciate you taking my approach to moderating. Um, so, Philip, I mean, this is a heavyweight topic that you just went through. I mean, this is big stuff. And when I looked at the last couple of slides that you did, that is a lot to think about. Um, maybe you want to show that last, not the last slide, but the one at the end where you talked about ethics and those other items. Those are all topics that require deep thought.
yeah, I stopped sharing so that way we could move to other presentations and stuff that people have to have, and maybe within the context of some of the other things that people are going to be talking about, we could cover it there. But one thing I want to say is this, that I've I feel that ethics needs to be that there are a number of things that are happening, especially since we're online here. There are a number of things that are happening in every country where it's calling into question the ethical basis of decisions that are being made. And I think what my fear is that we're losing our who we are in every country that we're in because of the climate that is being set up regarding how we make decisions on people, products, and the planet. And that's where I come back to that people, products, and the planet piece.
Thank you. This is a lot to digest. Stephen Howard, you've been quiet too long. I want to get you involved here. And because you, I know, have been thinking about this stuff and what kind of leadership business leadership is required today.
Yeah, I love Philip's comments there at the end about the ethics and the people. And I'm going to make an assumption when he's talking about people, he's not only talking about the people within the organization, but he's also talking about the people in the communities who are affected by the community. So, one of the things that bothers me about leadership over the last several years is companies have been adding people, which is great, hiring more workers. But then suddenly they lay off. I mean, what is it? Microsoft today, I think it was, announced 8,000 or 9,000 people being laid off. And the people being laid off are not the leaders who made those decisions to beef up the workforce by 8,000 or 9,000 people over the last few years. So people who are making these decisions are not being held accountable for those decisions. And they're maintaining their high salaries by cutting jobs and cutting large amounts of jobs. I mean, if I was an entrepreneur and I set up a business and I hired 20 people and had to lay off 7 of them, I'd feel terrible. I mean, what kind of an entrepreneur would I be if I wasn't managing my business and the growth of my business? So leaders are making these mistakes and they're not taking into account the impact on people of their decisions, both the people within the organization and their local community. So I totally agree with what Philip said there. If I can have 30 more seconds, I'd just like to add one other thing because it's been touched upon by several people here. I think Pierre talked about it. Philip mentioned it. Ron talked about a great story, Ron. By the way, I'm going to use your German restaurant story because I often get asked because I've spent almost my entire adult life living outside the United States, and I lived in Asia, Australia, and Mexico. And I often get asked by people, well, this person's going to be going overseas. We're considering this person for an expatriate job. What advice can you give them? And one of the things I always tell them is immerse yourself in whatever country, community, culture you're going into. And here's the example I tell them. I lived in Singapore for 21 years. I never joined the American Club. American Club had 12,000 members. I knew a lot of them, obviously, and I got invited there many, many times, but I never joined. I joined the Dutch Club because it forced me to interact with a lot of Europeans that I would not have interacted with on a normal basis. And then I joined a thing called the Pine Tree Club in Singapore, which is about 80% Singaporeans and only about 20% expatriates. And, I lived in Singapore at a time when it was a huge expatriate community. So by immersing myself, or Philip used the word connecting and somebody else used the word assimilating, those to me, we go back to what we're talking about before Philip's presentation, those to me are the keys at whatever level you are of an organization. When you move to another country, those are going to be the keys to your success, your personal success, and therefore the organization's success in that country. So I just want to kind of wrap that up a little bit from my perspective.
Beautiful. Armelle, what do you think of all this?
Oh, it's complicated because it's really depend of every situation. But I love the word that you use, assimilated, Stephen. Yeah, it was the same for. I think to be a leader, you need to be curious, to understand the people who are with you and help them to be curious too. It's just because now in my team, for example, I have a lady from Dubai, and she doesn't ask any question. So it's very surprising for me because if you want to be integrated, or if you want in a team, it's like in a new country, it's exactly the same. You need to ask questions because you don't know how things happen here, and so it's exactly what Stephen were saying. Yeah, a leader need to ask questions, to be curious, but and to help the people in their team to be curious to adapt in the new environment. So it's very interesting, and I love your presentation, Philip. Many things were very interesting, and yes, to be also curious to the new things that happen. AI. I love your Gamma presentation because I use too also this tool. So it's very good to see how AI can help us to be better leader also.
So a lot
If
of
I may add
people,
something,
oh yes, please go
sorry.
right ahead.
Yeah,
Good.
just to to say to add a few things to what Amel said, really, I mean, in a very pertinent way. I see the risk, because when I was a young expat, that was like when I was like 23, 24, means that was 5 years ago. We didn't have all the digital tools that we have today, so we were kind of forced to interact with local
Yeah.
people, to go to the pub, to go to restaurant, to attend clubs, to meet, real people. Today, the new generations, including ourselves, by the way, we are with our laptop. Meaning, whether you are in New York City, in Geneva, in Cairo, you still interact with your friends at home, and you spend your time, and you are in a digital world. So it may seem very international because with this little thing, you have access to the whole world. However, it's also a risk of isolation. And we see that more and more. So, I mean, you can be in Geneva, you can, and, spend your day with your smartphone, keep in touch with your friends back in New Jersey. You can, interact with your family. You can have videos, and you don't have really you don't feel the need to interact with local people. So I will say that that is a risk today that we have.
And it's what Philip said, that connection, to be a good leader is to help people make connection. And I think it's a very good point too.
I admire you, Armel, for doing this, today with a bunch of guys who
Okay.
you never met before, starting with me. And you're very welcome to continue being involved.
Okay, thank you.
There's never a registration fee, but we always want memberships and advertisers. But another time about all that. The concept of what I've been trying to do for 5 years with this program, I affectionately call it the Global Meeting Room. COVID crashed into my live conference business that I was doing consistently for 30 years. And I'm beginning to get back into it. But I really love the possibilities of TV. This is TV to me. And so it's what you do with it that counts. Having a leader like Philip Berry, who I've known since 1999 in a business relationship, we communicate. And I've learned so much and I'm going to learn so much from studying your presentation, Philip, because there's a lot there that I'm reading the words and I understand the words, but I've got to grasp the meaningfulness of some of what you put up on the screen. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you some questions when I can put the words together in my head, but it's not right now. I've got a full schedule today I've got to take care of in a few minutes, starting with Ron Cooper and that deep topic that he previewed. At my 11 a.m., I'm having a conversation with a young woman in Brazil. Carolina is her name, and she helps expats speak English better. And she has also worked in Washington, D.C. in person, but is now living in her home in northern Brazil. She's been on a couple of our shows previously, but this is just going to be a conversation about what I'm doing, and then she's going to jump in and do some things. If any of you want to join that conversation, it's at 11 a.m. Shoot me a quick email and I'll send you the link. And if not, of course, it's a busy week here with the 4th of July celebrations.
Excuse me, Ed. Sorry,
Yes.
I don't want to, I mean, I want to interrupt, but I don't want to interrupt. May I just share something that really
Yes.
highlights what Philip shared earlier? And this is how he mentioned about complicated. The world is complicated, changing very fast and diverse. I just want to share a post you will see on the screen. So this is what I put on. So on the left side, you have the manager coming in and talking with younger people saying, hey, do you mind if I put a device in front of your table? Because we're really interested in hearing what are your preferences, what do you like to do, da, da, da. So this way we can serve you better. And of course, everybody said, like, yeah, right. You want us to listen to our private conversations. So fast forward of how fast things are. Here's we are today. We carry the iPhones with us. We carry our phones right in front of us at the table. We talk about everything. We even take it to our bedroom and we put it right next to our bedroom. So absolutely, I love the fact that it's this is what's happening. This is what we're dealing with when we're talking about ethics, when we're talking about how fast things are. Yes, leaders have to be nimble. They have to be quick. They have to make the right decision and take into consideration the differences, not only between national cultures, as like Winston Churchill said, the United States and the UK are two countries that are divided by the same language. So even it doesn't mean that you speak the same language. It doesn't mean that there are so many differences. And for a long time, and I've done that for the last 30 years, teaching how to identify somebody culture. Do they subscribe to the Singaporean culture? Do they subscribe to the French culture? I think the next step in cultural awareness is figuring out, does that person act like somebody in a different culture? So it's really beyond now how people look, how people talk. They're just depending on the environment that they grow up in, because we are the product of the environment that we grow up in. And absolutely, for the assimilation piece, is not assimilate necessarily to lose your identity and use your culture, is really to be present and be yourself and have that psychological safety where you can be yourself, but appreciate the environment that you go to. Appreciate. If I go to France or I go to Germany or any other country, and the way I walk around, why do they do this? Oh, that's not wrong. What is this? Why do they do this? Yeah, French people interrupt. Oh, this is bad. Germans are just so into data and why do you do this? Oh, you know what? How many friends how many relationships am I going to be able to build? Zero. So absolutely, assimilation doesn't mean like losing your identity, but just be able to appreciate the environment and appreciate other cultures, because nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. See?
That's beautiful. Thanks. Stephen, can I ask you about, this is an unprepared question, everybody. Can a manager, should a manager involve themselves in the employee's family life?
Yes, if it's impacting the performance in the workplace, or the mindset or attitude in the workplace. The question is how, to what extent. So that extent could be as simple as letting him know what resources the corporation can provide on a personal solution. I mean, I've had situations, for instance, where I've had employees that I've been coaching, and they've told me about, and the same thing applies to coaches, by the way, as well as leaders. They've mentioned to me that they've got a teenager with a drug problem, and I, point them in the direction of the resources that their organization has. I'm not going to get involved in that extent. Listening, if they bring it up, yes, you shouldn't close the door. And I've had leaders tell me, I'm not a psychiatrist, I can't help them. I say, you don't have to be a psychiatrist, you have to be a human being. You have to be willing to listen to them. Maybe that's all they need right now, is a shoulder to cry on, or a buddy to share something with, or express their emotions, and then decide to what extent is your assistance going to be. And that could be anything from, helping them out, pointing them in the right direction, or being more proactive with them, depending on it. So that's the short answer is yes. The long answer is to what extent.
Ali, this goes right up your alley, showing that you care.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with what Stephen mentioned. There's, you have to be careful of, you got to really understand your audience. If an individual, you see they're going through stressful situation, all what you can do is you can just come in and say, tell me, I know that you have a family problem. Let me talk with you. Should I talk with your wife and figure out how to solve that problem? That it's also the delivery, how they approach. But there are ways as for leaders to do is create those options, communicate, hey, this is what the company provides, provides psychologists, provides people who can support in case of problems. Here are the benefits of being of the company. So really, don't tell this person that I think you're hungry and you want to eat, but just put the menu right in front of them and say, hey, these are the menu, this is what we have. If in case somebody's hungry, you can do that, right? And then really understand the person, because some cultures do not want to get into their business. You're my leader, that's fine, but don't ask me about how my family, don't ask me about how my wife is doing, right? So you really need to consider the audience, you consider the person. And this is where I think the leaders, if they wait for the time when their employee is in trouble to figure out how can I talk with them, there's a little bit too late. So what really need to be, they need to be proactive, create that environment ahead of time, build relationships ahead of time. So be like soldiers. You don't train soldiers right before the war. You train them ahead of time. That structure in the company, creating everything, provide all that environment for people to feel safe, to have you can have candid conversation and dangerous conversations and still feel safe. So all of
This-
that is ahead of time. If you wait till
This is not just
minute-
culturally also, Ed. It can also be gender. There's a lady I worked with in Idaho, and on a personal, she was extremely friendly. When we would meet, hugs, kiss on the cheek, particularly if we're meeting socially or whatever with a group of people. But one time I was giving a major presentation on a project, and her boss's boss was coming into the meeting. And as she came in and I was about to go over and, hello, how are you? She put her hand out. Hello, Stephen. Good to see you again. And boy, you have to be flexible. Everything is in context. In that corporate culture, with their boss's boss, it was more formal. And you
Right.
you have to be so in tune. This is a mindset, and this is a bit of mindfulness, being so in understanding that where you are, what's happening at the moment where you are, so that you can respond, not react, but respond effectively in that situation. And so it's not just culturally. Culturally, yes, but it can be corporate culturally as well.
Philip,
Yeah.
you have so much experience with such a diverse employee base.
I think what Ali and Stephen said. When you have the short way to answer that is that you need to have an organized approach when you realize that there are problems like that. So that way the leader is not just going off on his or herself to address a problem without coming to HR and finding out what is the unified, organized way that we can approach providing resources that show that we care, that show that we want to help, and to be helpful. I mean, it's a whole. There's so much that's built into that. We could do a whole course on that, on that topic.
Thank you all for this. Can go on and on and on, but time is crunching me. I need to end this in the next few minutes. Pierre, thanks so much for coming back on the show. It's been a while, and I know you've
pleasure.
been through changes and all that. So please consider getting more involved.
Good luck with your businesses, Pierre.
Thank you very much, and happy to help whenever you have, needs in for Switzerland or anywhere, or if you, you need some more insight about global employment companies, EOR. I mean, we are here to help, and it was nice to catch up with some very familiar faces, and also to discover new faces. And I'm looking forward to, connecting with these new faces. Ali, it's the first time we met. Armel is the first time. I think Stephen probably yes. Ron definitely we met before, and of course Philip and Ed. we met, we know each other for a long, long, long time.
Yeah,
Ed, no,
yeah.
definitely. Ed, you have to get Armel to come back in and talk a little bit more about the issue around women and men and her insights into that. I'd love to be, I'd like to be a part of that conversation.
I'd love to have it. Armel,
You know,
I'm going to be
Ed-
sending you invites.
Ed, let me advance, Philip, what you just said. I'm very interested, Armel, in your thought in the context of what Stephen said. But there are some cultures, some people who would say, you never, as a man, you never initiate a hug or a handshake to a woman. You respond to what she initiates. Armel, I'm curious. Is that the way you are? Is that worldwide, or is that individual to individual?
It's really individual.
It's like,
but you know,
sorry.
when you, when you have a man who are coming to kiss you, you can't, I mean, in France, it's very common to kiss on cheeks because we say bonjour with that. But for me, I remember when I was young, it was sometimes difficult to do it because I was not really agree to do it, but it was the use. So I had to do it. But now I'm able to say no. So I don't do it if I don't want. And I really keep that for my friends, really more than for corporate people. So
Yeah,
it's
the
a good
context.
question.
The
And
context
it's
is
changing a
important.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really depends on the context. Yeah,
Fasc-
and you're right. It's
fascinating.
better to leave the woman doing the starting than that men do start. It's better. Yeah.
Well, I've been married for 30 years, so I mean, I've learned to obey.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I think you need more women in your group. Huh? You are big. So maybe it's because I just arrived today, and usually there are more women. But
Yeah, usually he has women on the group.
Yeah,
okay, okay.
This is
we've
just
been
an amazing-
outnumbered in the past, so there are times where we have more women than men.
Yeah, because it's good to have a
Yeah.
To answer your question, Ron, success in Latin America is very simple. See me, amor. Yes, my love, whatever you say. Yes, see me, amor.
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, well, I think we should end this on that note.
Very positive one.
See
All right.
me, amor.
Happy July to everybody.
Yeah,
And
Happy 4th of July. Enjoy. I hope you will have a long weekend to relax and enjoy 4th of July.
okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
well, we're on Sunday evening, we're going to the Coronado outdoor conference. Coronado is right across the water here, and it's the headquarters of U.S. Navy Pacific Fleet.
Oh,
And
that should be nice.
yeah, so they're going to have the Marine Band and also a rock and roll band and 5,000 people in the park.
I'll be watching the
Wow.
broadcast around the world with fireworks everywhere.
Yeah,
Hope you will take
yeah.
some pics. And
Yeah, we'll
share
take
with us.
pics. Yeah, we'll do.
All right.
Ron, we'll see you on TV in a few minutes
All right.
on
Thank
another
you.
channel.
All right. Great to be with each of you.
All right,
All
take
right.
Have a
care.
great
For
day
the
or a
invitation.
great evening.
Yeah.
Bye.
Take care.
Bo-
It was a
bo-
pleasure.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir, la prochaine,
Bonsoir.
alors.
Bye bye.
À bientôt.
Bye-bye.
À bientôt.
À bientôt.